Imagine the exact second a human heart just simply gives up.
Right.
The underlying biological structure has completely collapsed, and a human life is suddenly in free fall. What happens in the very next second?
Well, that is the terrifying absolute threshold where human biology ends and, where the machines have to take over.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're doing something a bit unusual today. We aren't dissecting a news article or like reading through a Wikipedia page.
No, definitely not.
We are taking you, our listener, inside a very different kind of classroom. We are sneaking into the virtual halls of modern high-stakes medicine.
It's fascinating.
It really is. We've got our hands on the curriculum overview for a 2026 webinar straight from the Mayo Clinic Cardiovascular Education platform.
And, just looking at the menu of this platform sets a very specific tone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the professionals logging into the system are studying things like adult congenital heart disease, electrophysiology, interventional cardiology.
Not exactly light reading.
Exactly. This isn't casual browsing. This is the continuous, intense education required to keep the top medical professionals at the absolute cutting edge of human survival.
And the specific virtual room we are walking into today is a session hosted by Dr. Philip J. Spencer, featuring a guest expert, Dr. Atabey Farr.
Right.
Their topic, ECMO strategy to support patients with cardiogenic shock.
Right.
Now, you might be thinking, I am not a cardiologist. Why should I care about the syllabus for a highly technical medical webinar?
It's a fair question.
Right. But the reason we are doing this deep dive is because peering into this curriculum gives you a profound front-row seat to the extreme edge of medicine.
It really does.
It reveals the exact physical mechanics of keeping someone alive when their own body has surrendered.
It forces you to look at the human body not just as biology, but as a system of physics and fluid dynamics. A system that can be mechanically manipulated when things go wrong.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to look at the machines these doctors are using, we have to understand that critical breaking point.
The exact moment the biology fails.
Exactly. The very first thing these doctors are tasked with learning is how to identify the, quote, key features of acute decompensated heart failure dictating a need for mechanical support.
That is an incredibly heavy sentence.
It's dense.
It is. The Mayo Clinic is packing a massive amount of clinical reality into those few words.
I want to break that down because the medical jargon can be a real wall. Like, I know what heart failure is, generally speaking.
Sure.
But what does the phrase acute decompensated actually mean in this context?
Well, to understand decompensated, you first have to understand what it means for a failing heart to actually compensate.
Okay.
When a heart begins to weaken, maybe due to disease or a prior injury, it doesn't just stop immediately. The human body is remarkably resilient.
It fights back.
Exactly. It tries to adapt. The heart muscle might thicken to pump harder, or the body might retain fluid to increase blood volume.
So it's trying to make up for the deficit.
Right. The heart is technically failing, but it is compensating for that failure to keep the person alive.
So it's shifting the burden. It makes me think of a massive architectural structure, like a grand old skyscraper.
Oh, I like that.
For years, that building might have hidden structural issues. Maybe the foundation is settling, or some load-bearing steel beams are beginning to rust.
But it's still standing.
Right, the building is structurally compromised, but is compensating. It shifts the weight. People are still working inside.
That is a perfect way to visualize chronic heart failure. The body is struggling, but it is adapting to keep you moving.
Then the curriculum adds the word acute.
Yes.
Acute decompensated. That sounds like the terrifying moment the structure just stops adapting.
It is the moment the structure actively begins to collapse. The rusted steel beams shatter.
Wow.
The building can no longer bear its own weight. The heart's coping mechanisms have been completely overwhelmed, and the patient goes into free fall.
And that free fall is what the source material refers to as cardiogenic shock.
Yes, exactly. The heart is failing to pump enough blood to sustain the body's vital organs.
It's totally overwhelmed.
It is. But what is truly fascinating here is the specific language the curriculum uses to describe the medical response to this collapse.
Right. They describe this acute decompensated state as dictating a need for mechanical support.
Yes. Think about that word, dictating.
It's not a suggestion. It implies that a choice has been entirely removed.
In medical terms, they are studying a very precise biological threshold.
Okay.
At that exact moment of cardiogenic shock, medical intervention is no longer a matter of trying a new medication or, adjusting a diet or just hoping for the best.
The time for that is over.
Right. The biology is overwhelmed. The situation is dictating the need for a machine. The laws of physics and biology literally force the doctor's hands.
The human structure is collapsing, so you have to immediately bring in external steel beams to hold the roof up, or the patient dies.
Exactly.
Which naturally makes me wonder about the nature of those steel beams. Once that critical threshold is crossed and the situation dictates mechanical support, what exactly is the medical team bringing into the room?
Well, this is where the curriculum introduces ECMO.
And what I really appreciate about this Mayo Clinic overview is that it doesn't try to impress us with the long, complicated Latin terms that make up the acronym ECMO.
Right, they keep it incredibly practical.
Yeah, it actually skips the spelling out part entirely and just gives us the pure functional definition. It defines the strategy as the, quote, use of percutaneous temporary mechanical support.
Which tells the doctors exactly what they are doing rather than just handing them a label to memorize.
I am getting hung up on one word in that definition, though.
Which one?
Temporary.
Ah.
If a patient is in cardiogenic shock-like, if their heart is in acute failure and the building is literally collapsing, why does this curriculum highlight the word temporary?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does. If the biological failure is so absolute, isn't a temporary fix just delaying the inevitable? I mean, why deploy a temporary measure for a permanent collapse?
That tension you are noticing, that is the core medical and philosophical reality of this entire procedure. Yeah. Let's look at the exact words the Mayo Clinic uses, because unpacking them reveals the sheer gravity of what happens in that room. First, they use the word percutaneous.
Okay, percutaneous.
If we break that down linguistically, per means through, and cutaneous refers to the skin.
So they're going through the skin instead of what?
Instead of cracking open the patient's chest for open heart surgery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are deploying this massive, life-saving intervention through large blood vessels.
Because the patient is already too weak.
Exactly. They are deliberately bypassing the extreme trauma of traditional surgery because the patient's body is already actively failing.
Okay, so it's a much less traumatic entry point.
Yeah.
Then we have mechanical support.
Right. The biological pump has failed to do the physical labor of moving fluid.
So the machine steps in.
So a machine outside the body takes over that literal physical labor. They are replacing biology with mechanics.
Which brings us back to temporary.
And this directly addresses your skepticism. Temporary is perhaps the most important concept in that entire definition.
Because it's not a fix.
Right. ECMO is not a cure. The machine does not heal the broken heart. It doesn't magically fix the underlying cardiovascular disease.
Okay.
It is, by definition, a mechanical bridge.
Buying time.
Yes, buying time for the doctors to figure out if the heart can recover from the acute shock or, buying time to get the patient to a permanent solution.
Like a transplant.
Exactly, like an entirely new heart. The doctors taking this course in 2026 are not learning how to cure the patient with this machine.
Right.
They are learning how to successfully suspend the patient between life and death while a path forward is found.
They are essentially freezing the collapse of the building in midair.
That's a great way to put it.
But I imagine plugging a human being into a mechanical life bridge isn't as simple as just rolling a machine in the room and flipping a switch.
Not at all.
You are hooking a machine up to the body's incredibly complex internal plumbing.
Which requires making choices. Real-time life and death choices that dictate the patient's immediate survival.
Here's where it gets really interesting. And that leads directly into the next part of the syllabus.
The strategies.
Yeah. So we've deployed this mechanical bridge. The biological pump is offline. The mechanical pump is on. But the human body isn't an empty bucket you can just dump blood into.
No. It is a highly pressurized, closed system.
Right. So if you turn on an industrial pump, what happens to the rest of the body's plumbing?
That is exactly what the doctors are studying in the second objective. The syllabus calls it the, quote, overview of different ECMO strategies and their hemodynamic implications.
Okay, hemodynamic implications. I have to admit, my eyes immediately start to glaze over at that kind of clinical jargon.
It's a mouthful.
What are we actually talking about when we say hemodynamics?
Just break it down into its parts. Hemo refers to blood,
Okay.
and dynamic refers to movement and physical force. Fluid dynamics, human circulatory system is a closed loop.
Let me see if I can visualize this. Imagine the plumbing system in my house.
Okay, let's go with that.
It's a closed loop of pipes. Water flows in at a certain pressure, moves through the pipes to the sinks and showers, and then flows out.
A balanced system.
Yeah. Now imagine the main water pump in the basement completely breaks, and the house is losing water pressure fast.
The acute failure.
Right. To save the house, I haul in a massive industrial-grade mechanical water pump and hook it up to the pipes in the basement.
An incredibly powerful external force.
Exactly. If I just turn that industrial pump on and force water into that closed loop of pipes in a different direction or, at a totally different speed, I'm going to change the water pressure everywhere else in the house.
Everywhere.
If I'm not careful, the strategy I use to hook up that external pump might force way too much water upstairs. Suddenly, the pipes in the upstairs bathroom burst from the sheer pressure.
Right.
I saved the main system, but I destroyed the second floor.
That is the perfect way to understand a hemodynamic implication.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The doctors in this webinar aren't just learning how to operate a machine's interface, like pushing buttons.
They're learning the physics of it.
They are learning strategies. They have to choose exactly how to configure this percutaneous support based on the specific failing anatomy of the patient right in front of them.
Because every patient's plumbing is going to react differently to that industrial pump.
Absolutely. Every single choice the medical team makes with the ECMO machine, like how fast the pump runs, which specific vein the blood is pulled from, which artery the blood is returned to, all of it drastically alters the physical dynamics of the blood flow inside that specific patient.
Think about what that means for the patient lying on that table.
It's terrifying.
And the immense pressure on the doctor. You're trying to save their life, but the very machine you are using could cause a disaster somewhere else in the body.
Exactly. A mechanical strategy that successfully forces oxygenated blood up to the brain to keep the patient alive might, at the very same time, cause a catastrophic, dangerous pressure imbalance in the kidneys or the liver or the lungs.
It's pure physics. You cannot forcefully push fluid into a closed biological system without affecting the pressure everywhere else.
The medical professionals are learning to manipulate the literal fluid dynamics of human life.
That is wild.
They have to anticipate how this temporary mechanical bridge is going to fundamentally reshape the hemodynamic reality of the patient's entire body.
And because you are manipulating this pressure and creating these dangerous new pressure zones inside a human being whose system is already failing, there's a massive risk of an internal overload.
A huge risk.
You can't just pump fluid endlessly without a consequence. Which brings us to a critical countermeasure the doctors have to learn, and the final piece of this Mayo Clinic curriculum.
Right, the overview of venting strategies.
When I first read the word venting on this syllabus, it stopped me in my tracks.
Why is that?
Well, venting sounds like the ductwork in my AC unit pushing out exhaust, or, the little valve whistling on top of a pressure cooker on a stove.
Right, very mechanical.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like a cardiovascular procedure.
No.
Why does a life support system need to vent?
Your instinct with the pressure cooker is actually the most accurate way to look at this.
Really?
Yes. This concept of venting raises a fundamental question about the physical reality of what the ECMO machine is doing to the heart itself.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about the scenario we just established. You have a patient in acute decompensated heart failure. Their biological pump is barely moving anything.
It's shattered.
Right. You introduce an incredibly powerful mechanical pump to take over the labor. You are now forcibly pumping blood into a closed biological system.
And if you are mechanically pumping fluid into a closed system without a proper way to relieve the pressure, well, something has to give.
Yes. The heart itself, even when it is failing and unable to pump, is still part of that closed loop.
Yeah.
Because the mechanical machine is pushing blood all around the body, blood inevitably backs up into the chambers of the failing heart.
Oh.
But remember, the heart is in cardiogenic shock. It cannot efficiently pump that blood back out.
Wait, really? So the blood is entering the heart, but the heart can't push it forward. It just sits there.
It doesn't just sit there. The pressure builds.
Oh, wow.
The heart becomes distended. It literally stretches and swells dangerously, kind of like a balloon filling with water.
That sounds incredibly dangerous.
It is. The internal pressure rises exponentially. If you don't have a way to vent that pressure, the very ECMO machine you are using to save the patient will cause irreversible, catastrophic damage to the heart muscle.
So you save the patient's brain and organs, but you obliterate the heart in the process because you overpressurized it.
Exactly.
So venting strategies is literally about learning how to release the steam from the pressure cooker.
It synthesizes everything they are learning in this course. Venting represents the ultimate high-wire balancing act of modern intensive care medicine.
It's a total tightrope walk.
It is. You are using brute mechanical force to save a biological organ system, but that identical mechanical force creates extreme internal pressures. Pressures that must be actively vented or managed to prevent the destruction of the very organ you are trying to bridge to recovery.
How do they even do that?
Well, the doctors have to learn how to precisely place additional lines or use specific physiological techniques to actively decompress the chambers of the heart while the ECMO machine runs.
Wow.
They are constantly adjusting the scales between biological failure and mechanical overload.
When you step back and look at the whole picture, the scope of what these professionals are learning on it, like a Tuesday evening, is staggering.
It really puts things into perspective.
It does. We started this deep dive by sneaking into a virtual continuing education portal. We saw doctors logging into the Mayo Clinic's platform, looking for live courses and webinars to stay sharp.
And what we found was essentially a masterclass in defying gravity.
Truly, we traced the patient's journey from the absolute biological breaking point, that acute decompensated state where the structural collapse dictates the need for intervention.
The moment the choice is removed.
Right. We saw the deployment of the mechanical bridge, the percutaneous temporary mechanical support, bypassing the knife to buy precious time and suspend the patient between life and death.
We explored the complex fluid physics of survival, too.
Yeah.
The careful, calculated decisions regarding hemodynamic strategies, ensuring that the industrial pump saving the brain doesn't destroy the kidneys through a pressure imbalance.
And finally, the relief valve. The venting strategies required to keep the closed biological system from swelling and rupturing under the immense power of the life-saving machine.
It's a lot to take in.
It really gives you a profound respect for the doctors who spend their time outside the hospital studying these objectives, preparing for that terrifying moment the building begins to fall.
It is a stark reminder that medicine at this elite level is not just biology. It is fluid dynamics, it is structural engineering, and it is the ability to maintain composure when the literal laws of physics are working against you.
And as we wrap up our time in this virtual classroom, I want to leave you, our listener, with a thought to mull over, something that this curriculum points toward, even if it isn't explicitly written on the syllabus.
I'd love to hear it.
We've spent this time learning that this ECMO strategy is, at its core, temporary mechanical support.
Right, a bridge.
It is a machine that requires immensely complex strategies to manage the body's blood flow, to balance fluid dynamics, and to vent internal pressure.
Yes.
But as these medical professionals continue their education year after year, these machines are going to get better. They're going to get smaller, more efficient, and more seamlessly integrated into the human body.
That's the inevitable progression of technology.
Right. So if our machines are becoming so advanced that they can perfectly mimic and manipulate our internal hemodynamics to keep us alive during total acute biological failure, well, as these temporary mechanical bridges stretch longer and become more capable of sustaining us indefinitely, where will the line eventually be drawn in the future between the machine's life and the body's life?
That is a profound question. When the biological foundation completely fails and the mechanical structure holds up the walls, it changes the definition of what is actually keeping you alive.
The human structure collapses and the mechanical one takes over. It really makes you wonder who is supporting who.